Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at Microchip Technology, and in the case of this stock, I have a quite compelling opportunity for you here today, as within the structure that is currently available, I believe we can look for a pretty substantial move to higher prices from a larger time frame perspective, as the structure is suggesting it, while in the smaller time frame, I expect to hold quite high levels of support, and I actually do not need to let this run for long before looking for an exit, before looking for the structure to more likely be looking for a failure, to more likely be looking at the very least for a significantly larger correction, which I am personally not very interested in. Now, let me provide the context for you from the larger time frame perspective as we move into the smaller time frame, and this way we can better understand why we are looking for certain levels to be reached, for certain levels to be held. So, from the large time frame perspective, I actually only really have a couple of options for this stock. I could either consider this to work out as a very bullish pattern, a very bullish series of 1-2 setups, which would imply that right now I'd be building a very strong wave tree that would be leading to very high levels in the case of this stock. This is actually a very bullish interpretation. And of course, there are other options. I could instead track all of this as something like an ABC structure. But even in this scenario, I actually prefer for this move up to be extending for a while longer. And of course, other scenarios would allow a more substantial top to be in, a significantly larger correction, a much more choppy structure, which is why I am pairing the evidence from the smaller time frame for the opportunity that I'll be sharing here today. So, in the smallest of time frames, I am tracking this as either an ABC structure or a series of 1-2 setups internally. Then, in this interpretation, I do not even really need to care about what has come before this wave to the upside, because whether this is a 1-2 within a large wave tree or it is just a 1-2 within a wave C, I would still be able to prefer continuation to even higher prices. So, in this structure, I am tracking an impulse within this wave 1. Doesn't really matter, but here we are. We have 3 waves down in a potential wave 2, not having actually even perfectly touched the 38.2% retracement, but it seems to have already taken off. And I am looking for the next wave up to take us to the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, which sits at $190. So from the current levels, this would actually imply a 90% increase. This is actually a quite compelling trade setup in that manner, and frankly, I do not expect this to need to take too long before we actually achieve those levels, if we don't end up building something actually even more bullish. Since I have the wave 2 expectations, the minimum expectations fulfilled, leaving aside the fact that the wave 2 didn't actually quite touch the first level of support, I am looking for a potential initial 5-way move to the upside, which I believe is very much a possibility, as I can look at this to have been a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, a wave 3 up, a wave 4 down, and a wave 5 up. That would allow it to build one more high and then build a larger wave 2 correction, which would serve as a third degree of confirmation, a second 1-2 setup, to look for the next wave up, to look for a secondary opportunity to enter within this setup. So, I'm watching the levels down to $94.50, and since I believe the wave 4 correction is already complete, I would say that the levels of support have been held, and I'm looking for this wave 5 to complete into a higher price territory than we have done within this as a wave 3. Now, with that said, while it would be very nice of this stock to provide that initial 5-way move to the upside within the smaller time frame, I actually believe it to not be necessary. I actually believe we could be looking at more aggressive price action, where this would have instead been a series of 1-2 setups, and I can actually count even here, in the smallest of time frames, another wave 1 up, and a wave 2 that could be incoming in the near term, where I would then expect to actually extend into a wave 3 in a much more direct fashion, where we actually do not need to build the secondary 1-2 setup, where it is more likely to build the wave 3 in white in a significantly more direct fashion. At this point, it cannot be known which path this stock will take. At this point, we cannot know if it can even hold the current wave 2 lows, but I do know that if we cannot take off from the current levels, we could expect a significantly larger correction. We could expect significantly lower prices in an extension of the wave 2, and we could even be looking for a failure. I believe that if we cannot hold the current levels of support within this as an internal structure, and there are a few options of what we can track, but I believe if we cannot hold the current wave 2 low, the momentum would end up being extremely damaged, and I believe the structure, in the case of this stock, would need to prove itself once more. For those of you interested in the closest 1-2 setup within this area, I would be watching internal levels of support for a takeoff within a wave 3. I would be watching down to the 78.6% retracement at $95.40. If these internal levels of support cannot be held, it is going to be a pretty good indication that this wave 4 would not have a bottom, in that this entire structure would actually need to build a much more compelling setup, would actually end up being extremely unlikely to fail. What other patterns can I consider that would still allow this stock to be extending in the wave 3 after all? Well, I could maybe allow this yellow structure to be built within the idea of a leading diagonal, where we might not actually end up building 5 waves up within this wave 5 in yellow, but only 3 waves up instead, at least satisfying the expectation to form a higher high within this as a wave 5. So if we cannot build a more bullish pattern, a more directly bullish pattern in this internal white structure in a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, I would like for this stock to at the very least build a wave 5 in yellow that would be able to at least take the previous highs. I really do not want to see a reset of the yellow wave 4. I either want it to complete the wave 5 in yellow, at least within an ABC pattern, or take off in a much more aggressive fashion. And for all of these expectations, all I'm really looking for is a retracement into the $98 region. As long as it has achieved the minimum expectations of forming an internal 3-wave correction into the white support zone, I believe it has done enough for the price action to take off, for the large wave 3 in white to continue in its uptrend, or for the yellow wave 5 to finally form a top and then build a 1-2 setup as part of the larger white wave 3. And for now, we will stop here. And if you want even more from me, you can check out the Patreon. But other than that, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. And if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.